there's so much blockage of the sun these days, it feels like. And like finally people are looking up and being like, oh, why does the sky look like a grid? And, you know, it is completely confirmed through news and the government that they do spray chemicals in the air and that chemtrails are a real thing. Obviously, the last few years have been nuts, and there's been so many things to put us into a fear state and keep us indoors, avoiding the light. Actually, my friend just sent me a Instagram video that showed someone walking on the streets in somewhere in LA, and there's an advertisement for a building to live in. That's an underground building, like an
I saw that
building.
Yeah.
I mean, like you don't need to go outside again. And I just feel like they are trying to now depress us and drive us crazy by blocking sunlight. And sure enough, it usually seems like whenever those chemtrails are up there, the next day is cloudy.
Absolutely. This
Thoughts,
is going on.
Research, tell us.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been talking about this for 15 years, you know, to the point where it's like it was falling on deaf ears for so long. And the whole thing where, no, those are contrails, when contrails last maximum 7 seconds in the atmosphere. And you can actually see that, you know, they turn on and turn off and turn on and turn off, which ends that debate right there. This has been going on since the 40s. You know, it's been, you know, weather modification, you know, weaponizing weather, and really understanding that this is a serious problem, which has basically evolved into this concept where we're now preserving the earth, because that's really how they're rolling it out, is that they're blocking UVA and UVB rays because of global warming. That's the whole story now. And that's the geoengineering story, is that what an awesome way of keeping the core of the earth cool and keeping the surface of the earth cool by spraying metallic atmospheric particulates, strontium, barium, aluminum into the sky cover and have it reflect the sun back out into space. That's the story. It's such an abomination. It's so gnarly. This is an existential threat, in my opinion. This is something that you can't walk away from, because this stuff is making its way everywhere. It's microns size. So it's getting into people's lungs. It's getting into the soil. And like you said, father, son, I mean, that's our core energy source of every biochemical in nature and in our body, endogenous, and it's part of the production of the life cycle. We're dealing with some strange stuff. And the whole thing, did you see my post yesterday? I was talking about, you know, this, we need the life force of the sun, but we also have to understand the sun. So it's not like you can't just be someone who wears sunblock for 20 years and then take a trip to Costa Rica and think that you can just go stand in front of the sun for 12 hours, right? There's a common sense approach. And this whole beauty industry about the sunlight is, you know, damaging you and dangerous to you. Again, common sense approach. Sunlight gives you life. Sunlight activates 3,000 genes associated with longevity that we know of.
Wow.
It's you know, it's the core essence of our circadian rhythm. So without sunlight on the rise, if you're not getting it into your eyes and getting it onto your body's immune system's not turning on, your clock isn't turning on. I can go on and on. Melatonin is produced from sunlight. And melatonin, we know, is not just the sleep, you know, hormone. It's actually one of the strongest antioxidants in our system, even more than glutathione.
Why, when the sun goes down, why is there a melatonin surge, right? Because it's when the sun goes down that the surge of melatonin comes.
That's correct. Yeah. So it's building that reservoir on the rise. So the rising sun builds the reservoir of melatonin, and then the body responds by releasing that melatonin throughout the brain and body and intracellularly as the sun makes its declination to the east. So as the sun moves away from us, and as long as we're not, you know, shrouded in, you know, I would say pollutionary light, blue light, spectrums like that, melatonin expands and releases throughout the body and serves as a major antioxidant. And it's actually creating redox in the body, where it's lending electrons to free radicals throughout the body from brain to toe. Very interesting. And that's why, you know, I'm sure you've been in a campfire, or, you know, fire is everything, right? So fire is very similar with the sun's rays to a certain extent, it's offering certain nanometers of light waves and infrared, which is
Mm,
soothing to the system, and it's
mm.
actually releasing stress and cortisol throughout the body. That's why you sit in front of a fire for an hour in a camp, you're ready to go to sleep. Usually you have the best sleep ever.
Yeah, or if you have the ability to get a red light, they recommend doing red light, sunrise, sunset to mimic. Because really, red light is just pulling a little narrow spectrum of what the sun offers, right? To help with the circadian rhythm and help with sort of waking up and going to sleep and keeping, because it's about the rhythm, right?
That's right. Yep. And I do red light every other day on the rise and almost every evening, around 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's part of the ritual, and it's got so many benefits on just everything. I mean, it's all common sense with your health. It's not like we can isolate or looking at it allopathically. It's like red light raises ATP or red light lowers cytochrome B or whatever it is. We get sometimes so allopathic that we don't realize that by it doing one thing means it's doing so many other things. And it's got an evolutionary aspect to it that's part of our entire doctrine and our physiology of being human. And that's where the spirit comes into play. So we get out of the left brain analytical biohacking energy and we start looking at these things as evolutionary and understanding that the human body was designed with a set of instructions. We're earth made. You and I are filled with minerals of the earth. Like, how trippy is that?
Mm-hmm.
Body is actually made of what we walk on, right? And we don't even know what's under us. It's such a
No
trip.
kidding.
That's why we have to ground to the earth. That's why we drink spring water. That's why we mineralize our body.
Oh, I think I saw you say something about being careful how much of that you put in your water for hydration. Is that true?
How much of what specifically?
Minerals and salt, or sodium, potassium, chlorine, all the different minerals and whatnot. Is that dangerous, or is it good to put it in your water all the time?
I think it depends. Like, some person's medicine's another person's poison. We have to really approach things pragmatically with who we are, where we are, why we are, how we live our lives, things of that nature. And so mineralization is foundation to health. Getting electrolytes, getting sea salt in your body, especially on the rise, especially around your vigorous workouts, is critical. But you can overdo it, of course. And then there's wrong form minerals, things that are made, industrial, byproducts that have no basis of being in our body and actually create damage and hardening of the body. That's when you get fibrotic tissue and overcalcification of the body and things of that nature. And so our body I came with a set of instruction. We have cycles in our life. My body's different than when I was 14. Right. And so it requires different things at different stages. There's a 24-hour cycle, there's a 7-day cycle, and there's a 28-day cycle and a 7-year cycle in the way that we need to approach our health. And this is traditional Chinese herbal medicine. This is an Ayurvedic approach, but they all correlate with new formed understanding of how our immune system works, how stem cells work in the body, all these different things. All kind of meet together at some summit, and so there's a lot of cool stuff here. This is what I love to do.
I'm glad you mentioned stem cells. I was curious. I wasn't sure we'd get to it or not, but so you were talking about these cycles. Is there something appropriate for each cycle, like the 1 day, the 1 week, the 28 days, and the 7 years? Is there in those cycles? Is it like, hey, every day you should be doing this, and every week you should make sure you include this, or is it more of a cascade that when you do each day right, it leads into the next 7 years? You'll be a different body because every 7 years we have a whole new body. Is that correct?
That's right. And we go through a shift every 7 years in the multiple complex systems in the body, whether it's our neuro system, our cardio system, our digestive system, all of those things, they shift a little bit. Things change, hormones change, thyroid changes, the way that we receive information changes, our oral health changes. All those things start to make a different shift. And so you're right. How you do anything is how you do everything. So every day, you're creating an opportunity to not only feel healthy, but to thrive and to get better and better. I do think that there are systems, depending on people's constitution, that would, lead us into stronger health and lead us into more of a resilient health. You hear a lot of the geneticists today talking about how we have a health span and we have a disease span. And once you leave the health span, you enter the disease span. And getting back to the health span, once you're in the disease state, is a lot more difficult than keeping a life filled in the health state. And we're in interesting times. It is what's happened over the last 100 years to our atmosphere, like we just talked about, to our water, to our soil, to our food, to our education, to the fear, to the scarcity. All of these things are destructionary forces that are the opposite of syntropy, which is a place of symbiotic evolution where everything is coming together to create a utopic paradise. And we're in such fight, flight, rage, hide energy with scarcity. Then you have all the physiological aspects that are falling apart. We're not getting sunlight. We're living in industrial warehouses. We're living in artificial boxes. We're controlling the temperature and the lighting, not pulled away from nature. That right there in itself doesn't allow us to pull on to our hormetic codes. And what do I mean by that? Hormesis, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And so we're no longer hunting for our spring water and growing our own food and putting in all this effort for the sustainable things that we need to survive. And so that's not activating, well, they call it now sirtuin pathways, longevity pathways. So we're just, we're sedentary more than ever. We're sitting on the couch, we're laying in our bed, we're sitting in a car, we're doing all these things. These things are keeping us from pulling on the strings of being active and pulling on the strings of surviving.
If you like this clip and you want to hear the whole episode, click at the bottom of your screen.